Welcome back to the Healthy Chicago podcast, where local health professionals and their guests discuss the latest public health issues affecting Chicagoans.
What's up, everyone? My name is John Jones, here with another episode of the Healthy Chicago podcast. For those who may have missed my previous episode, I am the Rapid Response Lead for the Community Safety Coordination Center under the Chicago Department of Public Health. And today, let me tell you, we have a treasure. Because not only are we starting our community engagement series here with the podcast, but we're starting off with someone who is outside working with our young people, outside connecting with community partners, and is our 2022 Gold Glove champion. We have the founder and director of the one and only Hood Heroes with us today, Jarvis Buchanan. Jarvis, you and I know each other very well, but it's an honor to have you here today, sir. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for allowing us to use this platform to share the purpose and the stories that you have. But we're not here to talk about me. So would love to hear first an introduction to yourself, your organization, especially with a name like Hood Heroes. Mm-hmm. That's a very powerful name, and that definitely grabs attention. So we'd love to hear the story of why Hood Heroes, the work that you do, and then just a little bit learn more about yourself as well. So I want to give the floor to you, sir.
Yeah, man. Glad to be with
For
you.
sure.
Finally get some time to sit down to check in. Jarvis Buchanan here, born and raised on the south side of Chicago. Live on the south side in the Rosen community until I was about 15 years old. Moved to the west side and been on the west side ever since. So I would say, particularly starting Hood Heroes in 2020, it really was just a culmination of my own lived experience growing up in the Rosen community. Attended Morgan Park High School my freshman year, went to Orr High School, sophomore, junior, senior year, right? So it was a culmination of my own lived experience and then the experiences knowing about my students and their families as I, became a counselor and worked in some Chicago public schools as well. So, just hearing stories about the struggles and challenges, the highs and lows of life with students, particularly boys, in our city, and also getting to meet their families, and checking in about resources and how I can best serve their families in my role, and really just understanding that it takes a village, not just to raise a child, but particularly boys here in the city of Chicago. It's rough, it's challenging, it's hard, and it was rough for me, right? And so as I look at youth around our city, I kind of have a heart for the youth who some people kind of cast to the side or throw away, or like, hey, this kid is a lost cause, this the end of the road, this kid's on his way out type deal. Those are the youth who my heart gravitate toward, because I was once that child, right? So starting Hood Heroes in 2020, obviously, our nation was just going through it. Our nation was going through it in 2020, but then particularly in our city, it was just a lot going on, man. Like, of course, the shutdown, everybody's masked up, schools were closed, all of that going on. But then there was, I think it was George Floyd, who was killed by a police officer, and then the protests that took place, and then some rioting took place, and then some looting took place. So really just like crazy, right? And then also there's a global pandemic. And so just making sense of that, I would say my mental health, Hood Heroes really helped me, because what I got tired of doing was staying at home. It's just like just work and stay at home, and it felt like a ghost town outside. And then when I started to see my students, again, I serve with an organization as a counselor with 55 students under my caseload. I usually have about 70, 75 or whatever, but seeing a lot more of my students outside, even during the pandemic, and less of them in my group sessions and circles, I'm like, I need to be outside with my students already. Right? That was a heavy conviction for me. And so, when I started to go outside with my students and see sort of the things that they were doing, I was just like, this kind of looks like me when I was growing up. And I know what my journey was like growing up and navigating life as a teenager, and I did not want that for my students, right? And so I was talking with one of my mentors, Brian, lives on the West Side, and just really just processing all of these things, right? Our nation, our city, a global pandemic, our students. I'm processing all these things, and but at the same time, I'm a runner. I've run 2 Chicago marathons. I'm the guy. I get up at 1 a.m. If I'm awake, I'm going for a run. I'm not about to sit here and do deep breathing and I'm about to get outside and go for a run.
Okay.
And so just throughout the day, 2 p.m., 5 p.m., and I would just see the same guys hanging out on corners, hanging out at the gas stations, all types of things. And I'm just like, man, is this really is this your life? Is this what your life is going to be? Just hanging out at the gas station, right? And then I start seeing some of my students, my former students, hanging out on the corners and hanging out at the gas station. I'm like, dog, I got to do something because I know them now. These aren't just random people who just it's like, dog, I know you.
Yeah, it's not even a caseload. It's like it's a personal relationship for sure.
I know you and your family, right? And so, with a group of 10 students in West Garfield Park is where we started. I'm like, man, don't y'all want to see a clean community? And that struck me because a friend who I brought here to Chicago to kind of tour and see the city, to check out things, asked the question, was like, why is there so much trash around here? Why is there so much trash everywhere? And that was one of the first times that I thought about it and asked myself the question, like, wait, why is there so much? Because I just didn't notice it, and I didn't pay that much attention to it. But then I began to ask myself question after question of why, as it relates to things of that nature in our city. And so then that got me thinking about, man, how could I be an agent of change? Not just to complain about the things, because at the same time, my friend who's not from Chicago, I would see it more so just like, you just kind of drag it on our city. Like, you just tearing us down. You don't like Chicago. That's what I hear. Yeah. And I would hear less of like, maybe you should do this. Maybe you should try this. Maybe you should try this. And so that's me. That's just me. I'm that guy. Like, hey, I'm not going to sit here and complain and talk about all the problems, but I'm going to think about how can I use the tools, the resources, the people around me to address the needs, the issues, right? So the issue that I saw, particularly in West Garfield Park, is like, man, there's a ton of trash here. Okay. All right. And I got students with me. I run 2 Chicago marathons, and people kind of got behind to support that. And so I'm like, man, maybe they'll get behind me and support this initiative, this thing, right? Students were talking about employment, right? They want jobs. Like, sending me Cash App requests, and I'm like, dog, I don't know where I think I got this money from, but I don't have it, right? And so those are 2 of the needs that we're meeting, right? One is youth need jobs, and then the second is community beautification, right? Community engagement, so to speak. And so, started in 2020 with 10 students. Particularly, we literally just started GoFundMe and then raised funds to employ those students for the first summer. And again, these were the students who, when I looked at them, as their counselor, they weren't showing up to their classes. They weren't tapping in on a computer, getting their assignments done. And so we established at the table, like, hey, before we get outside and start picking up trash in the hood, I need to see y'all on those laptops, checking in with your teachers, making sure assignments are done, getting the academics out of the way. Yeah. And so that was our day. Start the day, they get assignments done, and after that, we put on our vests, our gloves, get our trash bags, and go outside, and we'll clean up for hours. Dang. So that's pretty much how we started in 2020.
I mean, sounds like someone who's not just talking, but why talk? Let's go pick up a rake or something.
For sure.
So respect to that. Yeah. So the name Hood Heroes is, there's a lot of some artists refer themselves as the Hood Heroes, but like when you think of, I've seen Hood Heroes out. I've driven around. I've pulled up and I said, hey, y'all with Jarvis and them. Yeah. But that's a very powerful name for an organization. Can you explain why that name came to light?
Yeah. It was not a name that I thought of, right? Obviously, we were from Chicago, and some students, the first group of 10 students, we were talking about that. Like, what do we call ourselves? That was a name that they kept bringing up. Okay. They were like, we should call ourselves Hood Heroes. And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, because this our hood. We the change. That was really their drive.
Yeah.
And I kept telling them like, no, I've heard it. I don't know. We could call it something else, but it's stuck.
Okay.
And for me, that was just like, man, if the students are going to take ownership of this name, if they're going to take ownership of anything, then I got to let go of that control. And they say, look, you call it what you want to, you know,
sure.
so we're going to call ourselves heroes
Okay.
and we're going to get out here and make change in our community.
For sure.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Hey, man, I love it.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays, a lot of people want to utilize the voices of our young people.
Mm-hmm.
But as adults, we can be like, nah. You just don't know. That's cute. But shout out to you and your team for really
For sure.
sticking with that. And we're seeing the fruit of that.
Yeah.
Which I kind of want to go to my next point is the fruit of the labor that you've been putting in. I know you said you started with 10 individuals, young people. I know also that you have also continued this for every summer and year round. So starting with 10 people, where are we looking at now? Like how many young people does your organization reach on a daily basis? I also want you to share a little bit more about the summer employment opportunities you have, what that looks like, that schedule looks like, and just really hear like, okay, that was in 2020. We just had 2024. What has been the growth, the progress made, and what does Hood Heroes look like today?
Yeah. So, initially we started in 2020. It was strictly just community beautification, just picking up trash with 10 students, right? After that, again, more individuals wanted to jump on board and support, and then we had a couple of foundations who wanted to support Hood Heroes as well. And so the first summer we employed 10 students. The second summer we employed 50 students. All right, the following summer we employed 86 students. The summer after that it was 115 students. This past summer we employed about 140 students, and that's on the west and south side of the city.
Yep.
Right. The major difference between 2020 and I want to say the summer of 2021 was, again, with about 50 to 86 students now. Again, my reason for wanting to start Hood Heroes is I felt like, again, I served as a counselor in Chicago Public Schools, and I would see teachers going crazy. Because they have to be educators, but at the same time, there's some skills that students need, and in order to educate, educators care. I saw teachers who real life care about their students, right? So it's like, man, a teacher could just show up and do their job, and at the same time, know that their job expands beyond the classroom, right? And I would see teachers just trying to figure it out. Right, like how do they offer more than just education to their students, right? Like it's hard to teach a student when they stomach empty.
That's real.
Right?
That's real.
And those kinds of things is where I saw the teachers in the school building navigating and processing and walking out with students. And so for me, I'm like, hey, I think we kind of got this thing under control inside the school. But when our students leave school, I think that's where I want to invest my time, right? And so particularly during the summer, that's where, students are out of school unless they got summer school or doing some summer enrichment, right? Maybe there's some basketball or some football camps that students are partaking in, and that is great. But there are students who aren't doing anything.
Sure.
They have nothing planned, right? And so my goal for that is to say, hey, let's take 6 to 8 weeks of summer. Let's start employing students at 11 years old, right? And we want to start teaching them hard and soft skills, right? Time management, effective communication. This is another big thing, too, in the schools. Something as simple as wearing a uniform. We got uniform schools here in the city, right? And I will hear teachers and administrators even like, hey, kid, like, what's going on? You need a uniform. You need a shirt. Or kids being defiant about it. Like, I don't want to wear that, right? And so for me, I'm also thinking about, like, maybe if students had more than one place, if it wasn't just school, where these were kind of things that they just live by, right? It would become a norm as opposed to, I just put my uniform on at school.
Sure.
Right? And so now it's like, well, I work in Hood Heroes and we have a uniform. And I would ask students to arrive about 15 minutes before we start the workday.
Okay.
right? And that's challenging for some students. But again, we're talking
Life
about time management, right?
Yep.
And it's huge, right? So those are some of the skills again we teach. 6 to 8 weeks of summer. Typically, the format for the summer, Tuesdays are exploration days. We visit business owners and leaders around the city. We started that because in 2020, I did not really see Hood Heroes as much more than it was heart work.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so what Hood Heroes is today, I didn't know it would become what it is. It was just, again, the hard work. But I didn't know any business owners. And so to see Hood Heroes as more than just a name and some cool T-shirts, that meant I had to meet business owners and nonprofit leaders and, you know, people who sit on boards of foundations or corporations and be able to ask them questions, right? And so that's one of the things our students get to do over the summer on Tuesdays. We get to visit business owners and leaders around the city.
Yep.
Okay, what business do you run? How do you pay the bills? Who keeps the lights on? What make you want to start this? How long do you go to school? All those questions, right? And a student at 16 years old, they get to ask those questions of business owners and leaders around our city, right? And at the same time, they get to take public transit to do that. You know how many students don't know how to use the train or bus?
I barely know. Sure.
And they're in high school.
For sure.
Right?
Sure.
And so everybody's mom and dad and aunt and uncle, cousin, not dropping them off at school.
That's real.
Right? And so students need to learn, and we need to normalize using public transit. Right? And so that's what we do on Tuesdays. We take public transit, visiting business owners and leaders around the city. Wednesday is a community service day. And this is pretty much any organization in the city that's already doing great work. They're doing service. Maybe they're serving houses, individuals. We connected with a few organizations that were doing some service projects. There's a guy, Sergio. He's handing out like toiletries and supplies on the Blue Line stop. And so we're able to connect with him and plan to do that for this coming summer, actually. So anyone who's doing service projects, the Chicago Food Depository, we're able to connect with them as well. So, and again, the goal there on a Wednesday of the summer is we want students to embody the heart of service, right? There's no agenda there's nothing I need in order to just serve. It's just because it should just be that's in my heart. That's how I'm created to want to serve people, right? To see a need, to look at someone and see a need and go, hey, what do I have? Who do I know? How could I meet this need? And part of that for me, I think that is our city. That's Chicago. Like I don't think Chicago is a silo. We're not some small town, some isolated. It's particularly the hood. The hood thrives on community, right? On neighbors, right? If my neighbor needs sugar, hey, come to the house and get some sugar.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
My neighbor left their back door open. I'm going to close it and let my neighbor know, hey, you're probably rushing, or your garage door. You left your garage door open. I closed it for you, right? That's the hood. And so, again, Wednesdays, wanting you students to be able to embody that heart of service. And Thursdays, we connect with organizations that teach the trades. So carpentry, welding, auto mechanics, graphic design, 3D printing, welding, right? So here's the picture that some students, their GPA is great. They excel academically. They know exactly where they want to go to college, right? They have a post-secondary plan. They know what they want to study, how long they want to pursue higher education. They have a plan. It's mapped out. And for them, we're going, hey, great. That's beautiful.
Sure.
Do it. Run at it. And there are some students like myself who went to college and they're like, I don't know what I want to study. I don't know. I think I'm supposed to go to college just because that's what people around me are doing, right? And so for them, we say, hey, learn a trade, right? And so again, a student at 16 years old learning carpentry and welding and graphic design and 3D printing, summer after summer until they graduate high school. Let's say by senior year, they've learned 4 different trades, right? College may or may not be an option for them, but they've had some experiences and learned some skills in 4 different trades. So they got some ideas to graduate high school and say, I think I want to take welding to the next step, Jarvis. or Brian or Lamar, any leads you have on welding. I did some work in there before, right? But we want to give them those experiences. So that's Thursdays. And then Saturdays are our community engagement days.
Okay.
About 5 or 6 communities around the city. There's West Garfield, Austin, Washington Heights, Roseland, West Pullman, and we're looking to open a few other locations as we get ready to plan for this summer. But the local churches in those communities open their doors. People from the church come, connect with students, and again, all put on their vests, their gloves, their trash bags, and go out in the community. They do a community beautification. So maybe it's a community like West Garfield where students are out with leaders and they're picking up trash, right? Maybe it's a community a bit closer to Chicago State where there's a bit less trash, right? And so we're connecting with elders there to say, hey, do you have needs throughout the summer? Can we help you organize your garage? Maybe you need help with your lawn or carrying groceries, right? Again, so it's a community engagement day, looking for ways to engage those communities around the city. So that's pretty much the scope of what summer programming looks like. Some of the kind of success stories, it's been great seeing the Hood Hero students who have gone off to college.
Okay.
And so those students, we call them Kaleos. It means sent ones, right? And so they get to come back after going away to college. They get to come back to Chicago and be a leader at one of the Hood Hero sites, right? So now our leaders in training, the 16 and 19-year-old high school students, they get to see an older Hood Hero now come back as a leader to say, hey, I've gone to college, I've done all these things, let's continue to build. And they serve as a mentor, right? And so that is a beautiful thing that I'm even looking forward to pressing to more with the Kaleo program. Again, offering opportunities for our college-age students to come back and continue to stay connected to our city, to the youth, and to serve. So,
I mean, shoot. If I'm being honest, like, man, a lot of people, I hear a lot of conversation about people who want to do the work that you're doing. For those listening, this man just elaborately stated that this past summer, they had 140 plus youth who every week for 8 weeks,
6 to 8,
6 to 8 weeks, they met with a business leader, they met with a community-based organization, they got the trade experience that was welding, 3D printing, car mechanic. And on Saturdays, they went inside the community and provided services when needed. So for me, as someone who was familiar with your program, but is now learning more of the intricacies, I'm just amazed by because this is like what people want to see in the city. And to see it being done, seeing the progress, there's no question why there's progress because it's organic, it's natural, and from what you said, it's that natural willingness to just serve people. So man, like shout out to you and Brian Dye from Legacy and Lamar Sims. I know out there doing his thing out south. I will say from a personal perspective. A student that I mentor, Malachi, is with your program. And let me just say, Malachi is a gem. He's a gem. Nothing in life will hinder that man. But I've seen and heard from him directly about how this program has impacted him, how he's felt empowered and confident, especially with what we know. And it's just like, man, like, why aren't people talking about this more? And, from my perspective regarding community engagement, and the purpose of this podcast is to really highlight the work being done. But that community engagement piece, something I kind of want to go back to is, like, what has community said about this? Like, are there, like, your aunties on the block, or are there, like, your elected officials? Like, what have people said about the work that Hood Heroes is doing? And regarding, like, how can we be of more support to you all in this? Because from a city perspective, like we hear this, I hear this, I'm like, all right, bet. Next thing I want to do, figure out boom, boom, boom. We've had conversations already about how to plug in certain aspects. So what has community said about this? What has community said when they see your young people out there working? Because I know at first it was 10 men, but correct me if I'm wrong, I believe now it's co-ed, correct? So now we have men and women out there working. So what are some reactions from the community when they see your young people out there, when they see a young man who was in the program now in college coming back? Like, what are people talking about?
Yeah, so that's one of the most beautiful things to me is seeing people on the blocks come out of their homes
Mm.
uh, to offer ice cream,
Okay. Hey, it's hot, I'm
and
sure.
that's cool to me because you know, coming from the hood, man, it um, some places just lack investment,
Mm.
right, and resources, disinvestment, if you will. And so it's speaks to how powerful and instrumental community is, that someone already facing disinvestment could still see goodness taking place where they live,
Mm.
and then to respond uh, with joining in on that good
For
work,
sure.
right? A
For sure.
family coming out with a couple bars of open ice cream and say, "Hey, y'all, hi, here's some ice cream."
Yeah.
Or can we stop and get y'all a case of water? And so we've had plenty of people who would they'll run to the gas station and grab bags of water
Mm.
and come by and just say, hey, here y'all go, here's some water. All right, what else do y'all need? Here's some trash bags, here's some hand sanitizer. Community responds well to students being present. And then I want to give a shout out to, I'll say, man, without one summer Chicago, it would be challenging.
Okay.
It would be
They are
challenging.
supporting us. That's dope.
Absolutely.
That's dope.
The past 2 summers, we've been able to employ more students that it wouldn't be possible without one summer Chicago. And I would say that has been a growing thing to see the desire for our city to get behind empowering and employing youth.
Yeah.
It matters.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just major shout out to that. It's important. It
Of
matters.
course. You know, one thing I also want to touch on, because I follow this man on Instagram, and every day around like 3:30, you'll see him taking his phone out, and he's recording a bunch of kids, and they're running, they boxing, they doing push-ups, pull-ups, um, and whatever physical activity.
Yeah.
So share with me on like that piece,
Yeah.
because it's school time. And it's not summer employment, but you're still interacting with these young people on a daily basis. So tell me why that portion of your schedule is important to you, but also important to the work of Hood Heroes.
Particularly with boxing. So, I mean, I learned to box when I was a kid. Boxing helped me navigate so much, right? You know, when my mom was killed here in the city of Chicago when I was 6 years old, right? So I grew up without my mom. I grew up without my dad, right? Was raised by my aunt and uncle, raised by my oldest sister, right? Raised by my godparents, right? So community is huge for me. I'm a product of community.
Absolutely.
Boxing really helped me navigate all of those things, right? Challenges, the highs and lows of life in teenage years, even until adulthood. And I haven't found anything else to be able to kind of take its place. And so when I knowing that about me and where I come from, and then to see other students and their struggles and their journeys and their family dynamic, it it's a direct line for some students. It just makes sense. It's like, man, if I could have that kid right here in a boxing gym, it'll change them. It'll change them. And that's what I see every single day, Monday through Friday. So I part-time coaching a boxing program in the Austin community. And my youngest student there is 11 years old. 11 years old, and they're folk in their 40s and who come through and train. And it's a journey. There again, there's nothing. I've played lacrosse in college. I've run 2 Chicago marathons, ran track and cross country. There's nothing I've seen that really channels and be able to unleash the inner beast.
That's real.
If you will.
That's real.
I've heard it said that, in order to be my best self, I have to address, right? I don't want anything to spill over into my relationships with other people, right? I got a 5-year-old daughter at home, right? And so if I'm carrying my tensions and stressors and the workload and, a student who was killed this past summer, and checking in with their family and making sure they're well and showing up for them and doing all these other things for other people. And then at the end of the day, I see my own little person, my 5-year-old, and she just wanting to talk or to hang out, and I'm just stressed, right, from the day. That's gonna bleed into our relationship, right? And so for me, I'm like, man, I got to be able to release that energy to be able to show up as the warrior, if you will, in that relationship, right? And so knowing that again about myself, I think that's present in every person. I do believe that every person should join a boxing program.
For sure.
I believe there's a space in there for everybody. But particularly, it gives youth around our city again just an outlet. Some kids are going to play basketball, some are going to play football, do drama, do poetry, any of those things. But I think there's nothing like walking in that gym and putting on a pair of gloves and giving it 100% round after round. There's nothing like it. So
dang. And that's coming from a 2022 Gold Glove boxing champion. No, that's important, man. That's important. I think I'm still blown away about all the work that's being done in this city, and still amazed at the fact that it's been 4 years and we continue to see growth. We also continue to see you put more work into it, though.
Yeah.
You could agree, but I would feel like you're probably more busier now with it. You have a great team with you. I know it's not just you. But, 2024 just wrapped up.
Yeah.
So it's been 4 successful years. You've seen lives changed. I'm sure there hasn't been always a lot of highs. I'm sure there was definitely some lows in this past 4 years. But as we are in 2025, like, what's planned for 2025? Because earlier you said you want to get into more locations. But from your perspective, like, what are some goals that you have within 2025? And how can we, or those who are listening, like, really support those goals?
Yeah. So I would say one thing, and this has been on my heart since last summer. I would hear people. This is a theme of the youth don't want to do anything. They don't want to work. They don't want to work. And for me, I believe that too.
Okay.
That the youth, they don't want to work. They just want everything easy and all those things. I believe those things, right? And then when applications for Hood Heroes opened up, and I see, we're able to employ 140 students, but then I see 80 students on our wait list, right? I'm like, no, students do want to work.
Yeah. Sheesh.
They do want opportunities. They do want to do something productive with their summer.
Wow.
Right? And so we have to do all we can to make sure that's possible.
Absolutely.
Right? That's it.
Yeah.
That's it, man.
Yeah.
I don't think any student who says yes, who has an open hand to opportunities to want to work, to want to be employed, to be empowered, right, to grow as a leader, none of those students should be turned away. Yeah.
Well, I mean, for those who are watching who are like, I love this, I want to learn more.
Yeah.
Or is there a website, social media platform that you could look up and then maybe get involved?
Yeah. So Hood Heroes operates as a ministry of Legacy Disciple. There's a website, legacydisciple.org/Hood Heroes. And we're also on Instagram, Hood Heroes 773. So feel free to follow us there as well.
For sure. That's on Instagram or all platforms?
No, just Instagram.
Okay.
There's a podcast too. The Hood Heroes 773 podcast.
Come on now.
If you want to check that out, feel free to check that out as well.
That's dope. That's dope. Before we wrap up, 3 questions. Just kind of straightforward. Just want to know your thoughts as Jarvis Buchanan. When you think of the word community, what's a phrase or word that comes to mind that you could be like, when I think of the word community, this is the picture I have?
Yeah. When I think of community, I think of another word, Ubuntu.
Okay.
Right. South African sort of term or proverb. Right. Means I am because we are. Right. I am my best self when my village and those around me uplift me or support me, right? That is a testament of who I am, and I believe each person. I'm sure you have people in your life,
Sure.
and who I would not be here without these people, without my village.
Absolutely.
Right, and I believe that every person should have a village. That's community for me. Ubuntu. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that was.
Yeah.
I felt that one. Second question is, what is your favorite thing about the city of Chicago? That's tough.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give you two things.
Yeah.
Two things.
Yeah. My favorite thing. This is one. I love going other places and people finding out I'm from Chicago because they kind of have an idea of Chicago. Chicago is a gritty kind of place, especially growing up in the hood in Chicago. It's really like gritty. You cannot grow up in the hood. You cannot grow up in Chicago and just be whimsical, passive, lackadaisical, not observant, just kind of disconnected.
For sure.
You very well got to be informed, aware, connected, gritty. It's cold here.
It is.
It snows here. There's ice here, right? Like, and I love that about the city because it's a different kind of drive. I don't really know how to explain it. I don't know if somebody not from Chicago, I think they would understand it.
You just gotta be here to feel it, you know.
Yeah, but it is. I think a lot about right, a player like Derrick Rose, right, like what made him grow so well and thrive so well from very young.
Yeah.
Right, and even he would speak highly of our city and how much that impacted him. And so I would just echo that, like, Chicago just makes great people.
That's real. That's real.
Yeah.
And brother, you are one of them. For sure.
Appreciate that, man.
And the work that you do. Man, last question. This was not that serious. But if someone was visiting Chicago, they're like, Jay, you got to slide. I need one food spot. What's one food spot in Chicago? It can be $5. I don't know what your budget is. It can be more than that. But, like, if someone was coming in, what's one food spot that you're like, hey, you got to try this spot?
So I could choose two answers from this.
For sure.
It depends on where we're going. All right.
Okay.
If it's one of the guys, like one of my friends,
For sure.
I'm taking them to the hood.
Word. I'm with it.
So we either going to Sun Subs or we're going to Baba's.
Okay.
I'm like, hey, y'all got it. Let's
Okay.
let's just do this,
For
okay?
sure, for
And it's
sure.
gonna be all right after
Okay.
that. So that's that. Where else? I say Harold's. They got to go to Harold's.
We gotta go to Harold's.
Yeah, try Harold's.
Interesting.
We'll start there.
Okay.
I think
For sure.
everything else is to come, but go to Harold's.
All right, bet.
Check out some food.
I'm sure y'all may know, but if not, now you know.
Yeah.
I greatly appreciate your time, brother.
Yeah.
For those who want to get involved with Hood Heroes and their work, my brother here did state that you can look them up on Google, Hood Heroes, Legacy Disciple, and then from there you find social media, Hood Heroes 773 on Instagram. But we appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time as well, Jack, your creative director, Lalo, Josh, Bernardo for setting this all up. Thank you all. And we'll be waiting for the next conversation. So in the meantime, be safe, stay warm, and we'll see you next time.
And that's our show. Thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to rate and subscribe wherever you find podcasts. I'm Dr. Bora, and we'll see you next time.